What is it that awakens you in the night, when the silence is heavy and your body lies still, but your mind gnaws like a restless animal? Is it fear of death, or is it the heavier fear that life itself has no weight, no permanence, no sanctuary? Every man and woman carries this burden in secret. Even those who smile in daylight, who labor for comfort, who chase after promises of tomorrow, they too feel the cold hand of futility pressing against their chest in the hours when no one watches. Existence itself is a wound. To be born is to be torn from nothingness into a condition of ceaseless striving. The infant's first cry is not joy, but hunger. And from that first breath, the chain is forged, desire after desire, reaching toward phantoms that dissolve the moment they are grasped. You have felt it. The thing longed for seems radiant until it is attained. Then, like dust in sunlight, it vanishes into boredom and a new hunger takes its place. This is the law of the will, insatiable, relentless, indifferent to your peace. The world tells you otherwise. It dresses this truth in illusions, that progress will bring fulfillment, that wealth will still the heart, that love will cure the gnawing emptiness. Yet observe the faces of those who possess all this. Their eyes are restless, their gestures brittle. The banquet is abundant, but the hunger persists. It is not lack of food, but the impossibility of satisfaction itself. Desire is a well without bottom. And what of pleasure? It is but the briefest reprieve, not positive joy, but a cessation of pain. The thirst is quenched, but only for a moment. Soon it returns, more demanding than before. Every delight is paid for with longing, every ecstasy with exhaustion. Like a loan taken from the future, pleasure leaves behind a dead fatigue, nausea, disenchantment. You know this truth when the music fades, when the lover's touch grows cold, when the feast is digested into waste. Pleasure does not endure, only the will endures, sharpening its claws anew. Yet, strangely, there is relief hidden in this cruel recognition. For when you see that nothing can fulfill you, you stop demanding that life provide what it cannot give. You recognize desire as the chain, not the key, and in that moment you are less deceived, not liberated in the sense the world proclaims, but loosened like a prisoner who no longer beats against the walls, because he knows they will not move. There is a kind of peace in that resignation. Consider how time moves through you. The past slips away, leaving only fragments, and the future is never what it promises. Life is not lived in broad sweeps, but in the endless succession of small torments and small distractions. Each day repeats itself with minor variations, as though existence were mocking its own futility. You work, you rest, you eat, you desire, and the cycle returns. Even joy, when it comes, is a repetition, not a revelation. The most radiant love, the most intoxicating triumph, fades into the common rhythm of hunger and weariness. And still, you chase. You chase because you cannot do otherwise. The will is the engine beneath consciousness, pushing you forward, whether you wish it or not. You are not master of yourself. You are the puppet of a blind, striving that uses you as its instrument. You do not choose what you desire. Desire chooses you. And so, freedom is largely an illusion, for even when you refuse one thing, you only serve another. Here is the paradox. Existence itself is suffering, yet the urge to exist is the strongest force within you. You cling to life, even when it wounds you. You fear death, even as life drains you. The animal within trembles at extinction, though extinction is the only release. You hold the torch of being high, though it burns your hand with every flicker. If you look closely, you will see that every human face carries this same silent struggle. The mask may differ: pride, vanity, laughter, confidence, but beneath it is the same restless thirst. Some drown it in noise and distractions. Others cover it with work, with dreams, with intoxication. Yet no mask holds forever. In moments of solitude, the truth slips through, the hollowness, the weariness, the dread, and you recognize yourself in others, a shared affliction that unites all who live. The modern world makes the mask heavier, not lighter. It promises salvation through progress, through productivity, through endless consumption. But what is modernity if not the amplification of desire? You are told you may have everything, and so you want everything, and thus you suffer more. Your devices, your comforts, your social idols, they multiply the possibilities of longing without ever touching its core. In the glow of a screen, you find stimulation, not solace. In the pursuit of recognition, you find exposure, not intimacy. Progress does not heal, it merely accelerates the wheel of suffering. And yet, in this recognition lies another breath of release. For you see that the world's promises are hollow, not because of your failure, but because of their nature. The burden is not yours alone. It is the condition of existence. There is nothing wrong with you that is not wrong with all. The failure belongs to life itself. And so, instead of clinging to illusions, you may begin to let them fall away. Imagine standing at the shore of a dark sea, watching the waves rise and break. Each wave is a desire, a promise, a striving. They come endlessly, one after another, until the horizon is swallowed. You cannot still the sea, but you can cease mistaking the foam for treasure. You can stop chasing each wave as though it held salvation. You stand instead as witness, seeing the futility without demanding its cure. There are moments, brief and rare, when this detachment brings a strange calm. When the will loosens its grip, the world appears differently, not as a field of longing, but as a quiet play of appearances. The tree, the stone, the fading light on the horizon, they exist without striving, without suffering. And in beholding them, you taste a silence within yourself, a reprieve from the tyranny of desire. This is not happiness, but clarity, not fulfillment, but suspension. Even art, even music, offers this fleeting escape. When a symphony carries you beyond yourself, when a painting opens a window into stillness, you forget, if only for a moment, the burden of your own will. You are no longer a striving creature, but a pure witness to being. The relief is not that of triumph, but of absence, absence of self, absence of hunger. Yet the moment passes and the wheel resumes. And so life moves between hunger and boredom, desire and disappointment, striving and fatigue. There is no ultimate satisfaction, no final arrival. Even the greatest pleasures are shadows, fading as quickly as they appear. To know this is not despair, but honesty. It is the tearing away of veils. And once torn, the eyes no longer hunger for illusions. You have always known this, in some corner of your being. That is why joy feels fragile, why triumph feels hollow, why silence feels heavy. The truth is simple, but unbearable to the will. Nothing lasts, nothing suffices, nothing completes. Yet, in that unbearable truth lies the only form of peace available to us, the peace of surrender, of ceasing to demand that life be otherwise. And perhaps this is what death offers. Not terror, not punishment, but the cessation of the endless chain. The great silence in which striving falls away. The return not to darkness, but to nothingness, and nothingness cannot suffer. It is the thought of the will that trembles, not the thought of the spirit. For the spirit has no hunger. Only the will demands continuation. So here you are, suspended between the hunger of life and the silence of death. Every day you live is a compromise with futility. And yet, within this compromise, there is the possibility of seeing clearly, to see without illusion, to endure without hope, to rest for a moment in the stillness between desires. That is not happiness, but it is truth. And truth, even when it wounds, is a gentler companion than illusion. The candle burns low, the shadows stretch, and the question lingers unanswered. If life is a wound, why do you still cling to it so tightly? You clutch to life not because it promises joy, but because the will within you has no power to do otherwise. The hand that clings to the edge of the abyss does not weigh reasons. It trembles, it grips, it refuses. Existence is not chosen, it insists. You are its vessel, its theater, its pawn. The illusion of mastery is fragile, for the will governs you more thoroughly than your thoughts ever could. You do not live because you have found it worthwhile. You live because you cannot unfasten your grasp from being. And so, existence becomes a contradiction. You long for peace, yet you flee the only peace available, the silence of non-being. You beg for meaning, though meaning itself is but another mask. The will invents to prolong its game. What is meaning, after all, but the will explaining to itself why it must go on? Look deeply, and you see that even the noblest justifications for life, love, creation, knowledge are servants of the same hunger, bending their knees to desire. Knowledge is no sanctuary. To know is merely to witness the suffering more clearly. Each truth uncovered strips away another veil, exposing the raw pulse of futility beneath. And yet, even here, there is a strange intoxication, the taste of clarity, the sharp air of seeing without disguise. It does not soothe, but it steadies. Like one who walks barefoot on frozen ground, you no longer dream of warmth, but of endurance. Love, too, deceives. It presents itself as intimacy, as union, as escape from solitude. Yet beneath it is the biological will, ruthless and unrelenting, urging the continuation of life at any cost. What feels like the tenderness of the heart is often the cunning of the species, whispering promises it cannot fulfill. And once the intoxication fades, love reveals its double face: longing, jealousy, possession, betrayal. For even in its purest form, love binds you more tightly to the wheel of suffering. You see it not only in your own chest, but in every tragic song, every desperate poem, the endless repetition of desire disguised as devotion. Creation offers a brighter mask. You labor to write, to build, to paint, to compose, believing that through your works you will leave something that survives the frailty of your body. Yet ask yourself, what survives? A trace, a fragment, a shadow of meaning, and even that, in time, is swallowed by oblivion. Civilizations themselves rise and collapse, their monuments eroded into dust. The libraries burn, the symphonies fall silent, the languages turn into ruins no one can read. What then of your small attempt at immortality? Creation consoles only because it deceives you into thinking the self may outlast its own disappearance. But here, again, there is paradox. Though creation is illusion, it offers moments where the will forgets itself. When the painter loses himself in color, when the writer dissolves into the unfolding of words, when the musician vanishes into sound, the self is suspended, if only briefly. The act is suffering when measured by outcome, but the immersion itself carries traces of silence. Creation does not grant eternity, it grants interruption. Perhaps that is why, despite its futility, the world clings to it. And what of death, that silent figure haunting every step? It is the one certainty, the horizon, none escape. You avoid its gaze, distracting yourself with projects, with chatter, with the petty urgencies of the day. Yet always it stands behind you, patient, unmoving. Death is not your enemy, though you tremble before it. It does not pursue you out of malice, but out of inevitability. You resist it because the will resists it, but resistance is only prolongation. The more you flee from the thought of death, the more it shadows your movements. But when you turn to face it, something shifts. Fear does not vanish, but it transforms. You see that death is not the great catastrophe the will imagines. It is not pain, but the end of pain, not loss, but the cessation of losing. What dies is not the essence, but the hunger. The ceaseless striving that drove you is extinguished. And the silence that follows, though unknowable, is free from the torment of desire. The fear of death belongs only to the will. The peace of death belongs to what remains when the will ceases. You know this already in fragments. In sleep, when consciousness withdraws, you taste a shadow of it. In moments of deep exhaustion, when desire falls quiet, you glimpse its tranquility. Death is sleep without awakening, exhaustion without return. If life is the storm, death is the shore where the waves no longer break. To recognize this does not make life easier, but it makes death less monstrous. And so you live, caught between the fire of desire and the cool silence of non-being. You oscillate, as all beings do, between hunger and dread, between longing for life and longing for release. This is the rhythm of existence, the hidden drumbeat beneath every day. And though it exhausts you, though it torments you, it also clarifies you, for in seeing it clearly, you are no longer fooled by the bright masks the world parades before your eyes. It is in this clarity, stripped of promises, that a strange dignity arises. not the dignity of triumph, but the dignity of endurance. To carry the weight without illusion, to endure the futility without denial, this is not happiness, but it is a kind of truth. And truth, though it burns, leaves no aftertaste of regret. The night deepens. The candle flickers again, and the shadows lean closer. The silence that waits for you is not far. But for now, you breathe, you listen, you remain not because life fulfills you, but because it persists through you until it decides otherwise. Boredom is the other face of suffering. When desire drives you, you feel the lash of its urgency. When desire falls silent, you confront the void it leaves behind. You know this void well, the hours that stretch without urgency, the silence that feels heavier than sound. In boredom, the will does not rest. It glares at itself, stripped of its illusions. The mind claws for distraction because it cannot endure its own nakedness. And so, boredom is not relief from striving, but another form of torment, the torment of emptiness. Time is the accomplice of this suffering. Each moment drags forward, indifferent to whether you cling to it or resist it. In youth, time deceives you with the illusion of abundance. Days feel endless, the future vast. Yet, as the years accumulate, the same time begins to quicken, racing with a cruelty that mocks your earlier belief. The child waits impatiently for nightfall. The old man pleads for one more dawn. This is the paradox of time, too slow when endured, too fast when remembered, never steady, never merciful. And when you look back, what do you see? Not a continuous life, but fragments stitched together by memory. The years blur, only certain wounds, certain longings remain sharp. The rest dissolves like smoke. Life is not a tapestry, but a scattering of ashes, and memory arranges them into patterns that comfort you with the illusion of coherence. You tell yourself a story, but the story is not life. It is only a shadow cast on the wall of the cave. In this recognition, there is a strange lightness. You see that the weight of time is not entirely yours to bear. Time devours all without preference. Empires, monuments, faces, names. You are not singled out for erasure. You share it with every being that has ever walked or will walk. The universality of decay is cold, but it frees you from imagining that your suffering is unique. It is the fabric of existence itself. You may have noticed how often you seek distraction, not because the present is unbearable, but because it is empty. The phone screen, the noise of conversation, the endless pursuit of novelty, all these are shields against the raw exposure of time's silence. And yet, when the distractions fade, the silence returns with doubled force. You realize that what you flee is not boredom itself, but the truth boredom reveals, that nothing within the realm of striving can satisfy. Not fully, not finally. Still, even within this cycle, there are moments that pierce through like shafts of cold light. You may find yourself watching rain trace the window pane, or hearing a single note linger in a piece of music. And in that instant, the will loosens its grip. There is no hunger, no urgency, only being. These moments are not triumphs, but reprieves, islands of stillness in the ocean of striving. They cannot be clutched, they pass like everything else, yet their passing is gentler than the fever of desire. Consider how suffering binds all creatures together. The bird hungers for its worm, the predator chases its prey, the prey trembles in terror. Even the smallest insect moves in restless pursuit, driven by the same blind impulse. Life feeds on life, endlessly, without moral weight or cosmic justice. To exist is to consume and to be consumed. There is no exception, no sanctuary from this cycle. You may try to shield yourself with comfort, but comfort itself is purchased at the cost of other lives, other labors, other sufferings. The fabric of existence is woven from blood and longing. This, too, offers a paradoxical release. For if suffering pervades all being, it is not your personal curse. It is not your fault, nor your failing. You need not carry the shame of it, as though you alone were broken. You suffer because to live is to suffer, and all who live are your companions in this condition. This knowledge does not erase the burden, but it shares it. And in sharing, the burden grows a little lighter, though it does not vanish. The night outside grows darker, the candle burns lower, and time continues its silent labor. You watch it, knowing that every flicker is another step toward the silence you resist and secretly long for. You do not know how many flames remain, nor how quickly they will vanish. And so, you sit within this tension, the will urging you forward, the truth whispering of futility, and the small, fleeting reprieves where both are suspended. You may believe that in others you will find refuge, that in the arms of love or the warmth of friendship, the gnawing will might be quieted. Yet this hope, like all others, conceals its own cruelty. For what is love, if not desire, magnified the will, dressed in tenderness, demanding the beloved as though they were a remedy for the abyss? In their absence, you ache. In their presence, you fear losing them. Possession never satisfies, because the will invents new forms of longing, even in the embrace. Love becomes a chain with polished links, beautiful, but binding nonetheless. Even the purest devotion bends under the weight of the will. Lovers speak of eternity, yet their union is often the tool of the species, ensuring the continuation of life beyond their own fleeting bodies. You may think you love for yourself, but often it is life itself using you, pulling you into its endless game. The tender words, the trembling hands, the vows whispered in secret beneath them pulses the blind instinct of survival, indifferent to your happiness. And when the intoxication wanes, the truth emerges. The beloved cannot save you from yourself. Friendship, though gentler, carries its own illusions. You lean on another, hoping that shared laughter or shared grief will lessen the burden of existence. For a time, it does. Yet every bond is threatened by change, by distance, by misunderstanding, by death. No face remains beside you forever. And even while together, the hidden solitude of your being persists. For no one can step fully into your suffering, nor you into theirs. Companionship touches the surface. Beneath it, each remains sealed within their own silence. Still, these bonds, fragile as they are, offer the brief reprieves that make life bearable. To see oneself, reflected in another's eyes. To share a silence that does not demand distraction. To feel, if only for a moment, less alone in the ceaseless storm. These are the small mercies scattered along the path. They do not cure, but they console. And consolation, even if temporary, is not without worth in a world where suffering is the rule. There is a paradox hidden here. You know that love will wound you, that friendship will fail you, that every bond is destined to end in loss, and yet you reach for them. You cannot do otherwise. For the will drives you toward connection as it drives you toward survival, even though it guarantees disappointment. You live in this tension, grasping what you know you will lose, binding yourself to those who will one day vanish. And perhaps this is why grief feels sharper than any other pain, because it exposes, without disguise, the truth that everything you cling to must slip away. But from this recognition, resignation begins to bloom. Not the resignation of despair, which collapses into nothingness, but the quiet acceptance that nothing can hold. To love without demanding salvation, to befriend without expecting permanence, to care without illusion. This is the sober tenderness that arises when you cease to deceive yourself. Bonds then become not remedies for suffering, but gentle pauses within it. You hold them, knowing they will pass. And precisely because they will pass, you do not clutch so tightly. And here, strangely, the heart feels lighter, for to demand eternity from what cannot last is to double your torment. But to let beings be as fragile as they are fleeting, imperfect, destined for loss, is to share in their condition without rebellion. You sit beside them in the storm, not as saviors of one another, but as companions who know the storm cannot be stopped. This, too, is a form of release. The candle burns lower still, and the night presses closer. The bonds you once mistook for salvation now stand in a different light, not as cures, but as passing warmth along the endless road. You see their limits, and in seeing their limits, you cherish them more quietly, without the fever of expectation. Striving is the current beneath every hour. You rise each morning with the weight of tasks upon your chest, though the tasks themselves dissolve into the same cycle you endured the day before. Work promises completion, but completion never comes. For every goal attained, another rises. The wheel does not pause, it turns endlessly, grinding down both the ambitious and the weary alike. You know this truth already, that satisfaction is brief, and the effort to reach it far outweighs the moment it affords. The exam passed, the project finished, the promotion earned, they shimmer for a day, perhaps a week, before dulling into the monotony of repetition. And soon, the hunger grows again. What felt like ascent is revealed as a circle, and you return to the beginning, wearier than before. Observe the lives around you. How many strive for wealth, piling one possession upon another, as though ownership could quiet the restlessness of the soul. Yet possessions only multiply the chains. To acquire is to guard is to fear is to suffer. The mansion is a prison more elaborate than the hovel. The hoard of gold weighs heavier than the empty hand, and still they labor on, imagining that just one more acquisition will finally suffice. Fame is no gentler. To be recognized, admired, celebrated, it appears luminous from afar, but those who achieve it discover its emptiness swiftly. For recognition is never enough. Each applause must be repeated, louder, more frequent, or else it fades. The crowd's memory is short, its devotion fickle. Yesterday's triumph becomes tomorrow's obscurity. And so, the famous live not in peace, but in fear of irrelevance. They are slaves to the same wheel, only gilded. Even knowledge, that noble pursuit, bears its own poison. Each truth uncovered leads not to rest, but to further questions. The more deeply you see into the structure of existence, the more its futility becomes undeniable. The wise do not suffer less, they suffer more consciously. Ignorance shelters the simple from certain torments, while knowledge strips away these veils, exposing the rawness beneath. You seek wisdom to escape suffering, yet wisdom reveals only that suffering is inescapable. And so, in every form, striving exhausts you. You press forward not because you believe the next step will save you, but because to stop feels impossible. The will drives you like a beast yoked to a plow through fields of hope, fields of failure, fields of repetition. You may stagger, you may pause, but the lash falls again, and again you move. Yet there is a strange relief hidden even here, for when you recognize the futility of striving, you are no longer so deceived by its promises. You begin to see the chase for what it is, a treadmill, not a road. And though you cannot step off entirely, you loosen your belief that the next achievement will bring deliverance. You labor, but you labor with less illusion. And in the cracks between striving, a space of quiet awareness sometimes opens. Consider boredom once more, that torment which seemed so unbearable. Perhaps it is not the enemy you thought, for in boredom, striving falters, the will grows restless, but the hands fall still. And in that stillness, however uncomfortable, lies the possibility of seeing clearly. You suffer not because you are idle, but because you cannot accept idleness. Yet if you lean into it, boredom strips away the veil, revealing the naked truth, that the world has nothing new to give you, nothing final, nothing absolute. This recognition, though bleak, carries a faint breath of liberation. For if there is nothing to be gained, you need not chase so frantically. If every road returns to the same beginning, you need not rush along it with such desperation. You may walk slower, you may even pause, not in hope of escape, but in resignation to what is. The night deepens. The candle is nearly spent. Each flicker reminds you of your own exhaustion, your own circular path, your own approaching silence. And yet, in this dim light, there is a peculiar serenity. The serenity of seeing the futility clearly, and no longer begging it to be otherwise. There are moments when the wheel slows, not because it has stopped, but because your gaze shifts. A shaft of light rests across a table, illuminating the dust that drifts unseen in the air. A bird settles on a branch, indifferent to the burden of your thoughts. The wind carries the scent of earth after rain. In these moments, the will loosens its claws, and for a breath you are not striving, not demanding, not fleeing, you are only seeing. This is not happiness. It is not the fulfillment the world advertises. It is simply the suspension of hunger, a reprieve from the endless gnawing, a silence that arrives uninvited, delicate, fleeting. And though it cannot last, it does not need to, for even a brief interval of stillness reveals that you are not only the will, you are also the witness, capable of standing apart, if only for an instant, from the storm within. When you notice this, you do not clutch at it. For the moment you clutch, the will returns. You allow it to pass, as all things pass. And in passing, it leaves behind a faint trace, not of satisfaction, but of sobriety. The knowledge that even amid the endless torment of striving, there are intervals where the wheel grows quiet and the self dissolves into something wider than desire. The candle gutters, its flame bending low. Soon it will vanish, as you too will vanish, as all things vanish. But in this final flicker, you see both the cruelty and the calm, existence as a wound, yet existence also as a shadow play, fleeting and fragile. To watch it without grasping is perhaps the closest you may come to peace. The flame goes out, the room is silent, and in that silence a question remains, echoing without answer. Was it the striving that defined you, or the few moments when you ceased to strive?